Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for those who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of your life. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. Take a moment and ask yourself what your biggest, wildest dream would be in life. A dream that's so big, it immediately fills your mind with doubt about your chances of ever accomplishing it. Maybe it's to become president, maybe it's to build a billion-dollar company, or maybe it's to own your own island, and to get there you have to jump on your private plane and then board your private yacht. Well, in my friend Ryan Moran's case, his wildest dream is to own the Cleveland Indian baseball team. Now, owning a sports team is one of the rarest assets that you can acquire on this planet, but as you'll hear today, Ryan is dead serious about accomplishing this goal, and he's making substantial progress. In fact, he just had his first 8-figure exit after selling one of his companies at the age of 30, and now he's putting together a practical strategy that will take him to the 9-figure level, which is $100 million plus. So Ryan's one of my best friends here in Austin. He's one of the few people out there that I actually turn to for advice. He is absolutely brilliant, and the blueprint that he's laid out here for you today is incredibly valuable, and I can tell you with absolute confidence that within the next 10 years or so, Ryan will indeed be in the position to buy the Indians. Thinking bigger does not cost you any more time or effort than thinking small does. You're going to work 12 hours per day no matter what you do, so make sure that your efforts count and make sure that they're helping you build a bridge to something absolutely amazing. With that being said, please help me welcome Ryan Moran. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are joined by a very good friend of mine and a fellow Austinite, Mr. Ryan Daniel Moran. Ryan, welcome back to the show, brother.
Mike, thanks so much for having me on. I'm stoked. Very few podcasts make me nervous, but for some reason, Self-Made Man always gets me jizzer-jazzered up and kind of nervous. I think it's because I just respect what you have going on here so much, and I want to do it justice. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. You know, you were one of the first episodes we did on this probably like a year ago, and we had your first podcast episode, which was awesome. And since then, a lot of really cool shit has happened in your life and in your business that we're going to talk about today. And I think that is a story worth sharing with a ton of valuable lessons in it for everybody. And it specifically has to do with the fact that you've sold at least one of your businesses for over 8 figures, which is a hell of an exit for anybody. And now you're thinking in a very long-term strategic plan to get to 9 figures. And those are two things that I am looking to do here myself in the next, let's say, 24 to 36 months. So I thought it would be awesome if we could come on here and pick your brain and get the ins and outs of what it was like to go through an exit like that. What were some of the risks and downfalls that you had to overcome, and you know, obviously, what was it like to get that big of a win, and then go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great, because I remember, I think it was 2 years ago that we were on, and I was still kind of in the grind of it all, and then got to a certain point where it was time to go on to the next stage, exit, and we can talk about all of that. Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in.
Yeah, go for it. I'll let you take it from the top.
Cool. So my life goal is to own the Cleveland Indians. So as we're recording this, we're just coming off a heartbreaking loss in October, so they need my help even more than ever. So my aggression to own the Cleveland Indians is at its peak right now. So the strategy that I have followed in order to do that is to basically build an empire of businesses that I can influence. And it was maybe in 2009 that I saw Carl Icahn tweet about Apple stock. And as a result of him tweeting about Apple stock, I watched this stock just explode. And I thought that kind of influence was just amazing. As we're recording this, I'm wearing pants. Hopefully, I'm wearing pants that were made by a company called Mizzen in Maine, and Mizzen in Maine got big because they started advertising on Tim Ferriss's podcast. And I'm amazed by that type of influence, by the influence of Carl Icahn to add billions of dollars to a company, or Tim Ferriss to completely change a business by talking about it on a podcast. This fascinates me. So the reason I teach what I teach, which on capitalism.com, which is my company, is because I desire that type of influence. I desire to be able to impact the businesses that I buy and the businesses that I build. And I built a company over the last 4 years. It was a sports nutrition company called Sheer Strength Labs. We sold pre-workouts and post-workouts and testosterone boosters. Now it does exogenous ketones and some other supplements for the keto market. And I built that company mostly on the back of Amazon.com because that's where all the buyers are. My career has been built off of where are the buyers, where are the end users, and let's get in front of them as quickly as possible. And I got to $1 million very quickly. I think if you have figured out your product and how you're going to sell it, you can get to $1 million fairly simply in just about any business. In order to hit the $10 million mark, it requires that you duplicate that process as often as possible and to diversify where your sales come from. So we were in about 1,000 retail stores, and we had a lineup of about 18 products or so. But in order to get to 100 million, that was a skill set that I didn't know how to do. And if I was going to get to 100 million, I realized I would have to get a completely different skill set than I had. And that meant building a team. And I have not proven I had been able to do that in the past. It meant thinking a lot bigger or bringing on capital that I wasn't quite sure how to navigate. So we decided, my partner and I decided, we had taken the company as big as we knew how to take it. And we essentially partnered with a private equity group that had experience taking companies like ours to $50 and $100 million. And we sought them out and we dated for a while. We used a broker to open up some relationships and create some conversations. And what we decided on was that they would buy a majority stake of the business. I would exit operations, which was my desire to do so because I wanted to see how a group with deep pockets that had done this before would start to build an infrastructure of a business that would be much bigger than anything that I had grown in the past. So the first thing that they did was they went out and started building the team, which I found interesting. Like that was the first area that they started to invest in. And then it was more product development and more distribution. It's only been about 6 months, but I feel like I have become a better entrepreneur and I've already started thinking bigger as a result of watching someone who has done this before come in and basically take over the operations of a business with the expectation that this is going to be a $50 or $100 million company. So we can talk about how I plan to use that to influence all of the other businesses that I am starting to put my hands into in order to build up the $100 million empire. But that was how the exit and the decision to exit started to happen. And as a result, it was, an 8-figure payday, which is great. I just turned 30. So as long as I don't do anything stupid, I should be able to eat for the rest of my life, depending on what inflation or what decisions I make. And now it's a matter of planning out the rest of the empire.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I've got a couple questions for you. First on the financial side, did you line up any specific people or resources to help you, come up with a strategy or an investment plan around that? Or, what have you done? Is it just, like that? That's the entire point is now you've got the money, but keeping that kind of money can be harder than making it, which most people don't realize. And so what have you done to ensure that that doesn't happen?
I was walking actually outside your building where you are in Austin with a buddy of mine named Kamal Ravikant. He is an advisor to a bunch of Silicon Valley startups and also is really big in the cryptocurrency space. Mm-hmm. And we were walking over the bridge in downtown Austin, and I asked Kamal, I'm about to get this big payday. What do you recommend I invest in? What do you recommend I do with the money? And he said, the first thing that you need to do with that money is absolutely frickin' nothing. And I said, why? He said, the only reason you're asking me this question is because you feel the need to get rid of it as quickly as possible. You need to normalize having that amount of money in your bank account so that it hurts a little bit when it comes time to actually invest the cash. He's like, sit on it for 6 to 12 months. And I have almost entirely taken his advice. So I have invested in a few, actually my community, the students that I have at capitalism.com, I've invested in a couple of them, small nominal amounts. And the first thing that I did was when my 6 months was kind of up, I allocated a certain amount of the portfolio for basically high yield debt, and high yield debt in real estate syndications and real estate funds. And also I have a client and a partner who does high yield debt that's based on internet businesses. And I did that because the one thing that I wanted to shore up was just cash flow for the next 5 to 10 years, to know that like I don't have to worry about where my cash flow is going to come from. But the rest of it is sitting there waiting for the right economic terms to suggest what long-term assets to be in. And I'll probably go more conservative, long-term, modest yield for the rest of that, because the one thing you don't want to do is have that go away. Your money, that fear of it all going away just changes or gets louder the more you have. So I focus more on the cash flow piece and the long-term piece to that.
Yeah, no, that's
great.
Did
I just cut out there again, Mike?
No, you're good. That was great advice, and I'm really glad I asked that, because I did not know about your story with Kamal and that advice, and I think that's really, really, really valuable. So that's awesome. The next question I had for you was to go back to the comments you made earlier about the private equity guys that came in and just really started to take over the business. What were some of the things, specifically the lessons that you took away from observing that process?
There were two pieces to this. One was observing how they did the deal. And the deal was they wanted to be in it for as little skin as possible. Like they wanted to have a piece of a really big pie. So they went out and used conventional. I don't really know how they went out and structured it on their end. But what I did notice was they structured it so that there would be a bigger pie at the end of the day that they'd have a piece of, which was kind of your traditional private equity structure. But I was just never exposed to that before. I've bought little businesses in the past. I've sold little businesses in the past, but I really admired how they approached it with a much bigger focus. It changed my thinking about how to approach business deals in the future. And the second thing that they did was they went out and got gray-haired talent, we'd say. They went out and they focused on people with rings on their finger, championship rings. Hey, I've done this before kind of approach. And that changed the way that I view hiring team members. Because up until that point, I had just gone and hired people because I needed help. And I had worked myself into a different job, which was to be boss. And I came out of the entrepreneur role and became a boss. And they, as the buyers of the business, didn't do that. They went and hired the team that would build the business, which, again, we can talk about in theory. It makes sense. Like, I've read books that talk about that. If you look at Warren Buffett, he's not operating Coca-Cola, but I had brought myself into every business that I had been a part of, and every deal that I had purchased, or every website that I had invested in. So I shifted to more of a focus of thinking bigger, but also staying in the owner's suite rather than being in the operator's suite. And I modeled that, or I have learned that based on the individuals who invested in the business that we sold.
Is there any particular hire that, you saw them make first? Was it, operations? Was it a CEO? What was that?
Their first hire that they brought on was indeed a CEO. And then the next one was somebody with a finance background to clean up the financials. But I still have not hired either of those in any of my other businesses. But what was impressive or interesting to me was that to them it was much more about the Rolodex than it was about the rest of the structure. So the first conversation I had with the CEO that they brought on was, what do you plan to do to this business? And all he did was talk about who he knew. It was not about the strategy. He did not come from our world. He was just coming with a very deep Rolodex from other companies that he had been a part of. And I realized then that all of the shifts I've had in my career have become because of who was in my Rolodex. It was who I knew. It was who I met along the way. It was not really about a skill set that I had acquired, although that has certainly helped. It might be 20% of the equation. So when I've been hiring now in other companies, I have been thinking about who does this person know rather than just what does this person bring to the table in terms of skill set, because I think they are at least equally important. The Rolodex might even be more important on a macro scale. So that was what was most interesting to me about the people that they put into those chairs.
Very cool. So what's the plan now for level 2, if you will, right? 9 figures.
Yeah, so I've never built a 9-figure empire before. I can cross off 8 figures, and now I'm looking at the 9-figure deal or at least the 9-figure plan. And for me, I invited Gary Vaynerchuk to speak at one of our events 2 years ago because I wanted to know how to run what's the plan that he has for buying the New York Jets. And he said something, and I think most people just listened to him talk and heard him say his Garyisms and talk about what he talked about. But there were several pieces that he said to me that I took very seriously. And one of them, he said during our Q&A session, he said, my plan to get the New York Jets is to double down, to go all in on my singular skill. And his singular skill is branding and marketing. And his plan was to acquire businesses, apply his sweet sauce to them, turn them around and sell them. And that stuck with me. And I took note of that. My singular skill over the past 5 years has been building physical products brands. And now I know at least how to take something to 8 figures and to sell it for 8 figures. Okay, so if I'm going to double down on my singular skill and we look at where the dollars are following, I'm noticing more and more private equity groups and more big money firms come in and buy up these physical product brands. So I think it was last week, there was an acquisition. Kellogg's bought RX Bar. RX Bar are these little tiny nutrition bars that you see in Whole Foods and like some convenience stores. And they bought them for $600 million. Now, it's not hard to make a bar like that. It's a little bit of branding, it's some manufacturing, and it's a lot of distribution. And they were just bought by Kellogg's for $600 million because these big brands are starting to fear small distribution channels like Amazon and these small brands that are starting to emerge. And there's a lot of deals going on like that. It is a buying frenzy that is happening on these small brands. So for me, what that tells me is that I need to apply my sweet sauce. I need to apply where my singular skill is to build up these types of businesses and to keep a portfolio of them so that I can sell them. And there's also something interesting that happens when you run the numbers when it comes to selling a company. And I did not know this until I went through this acquisition, but not only does the number change as you become more profitable, but your multiple changes as well. So if you are $1 million EBITDA company, that might sell for 4 to 6 times that $1 million. But when you cross the $10 million in EBITDA, that opens you up to a completely different set of buyers, and the acquisition prices actually double. So, I mean, the acquisition multiple can double. So you're now selling a company for 8 to 12 times. So because of my singular skill and the influence of the network that I have built, I am now starting to court roll-ups, meaning we have this one business in this space. Let's partner it with other businesses in the same space so that we get the multiple over $10 million or get the EBITDA over $10 million. And let's sell that for twice as much money as we would all be able to sell for on our own. And deals like that do happen. Now, I am at the front end of this in my career. I am just discovering this and planting the seeds for this. But my total plan has been to go all in on my singular skill, which is these physical product brands, to continue building my influence, my Carl Icahn influence or my mini Tim Ferriss influence, and bring on the other individuals in my space that have similar businesses so that we can start to do roll-ups. And I am taking some of that influence and using it to acquire other brands and grow them. So I have another arm of my business, which is called the Capitalism Initiative, where we've now done 2 acquisitions, close on a third, and have 2 more in the pipeline, where we acquire these small physical products brands. We apply our sweet sauce so that we can grow them. And then we build infrastructure and management to be able to operate it like a true portfolio business. And in time, we'll partner them with other roll-ups and we'll grow them and be able to sell as part of a 9-figure exit. So that's my take over the world plan, if you will. Did all of that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, no, it does. I think it's a great strategy. It's definitely a proven strategy and it's executable, right? So I think it's great. The question that I have in my head for you is, what's the purpose of capitalism.com? Because that doesn't seem to directly support that goal. I'm sure there's an indirect component to it, but that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. So a year and a half ago, I acquired the domain name capitalism.com with the intent of building that into a media property, and specifically a media property for entrepreneurs. And the play there is for that to be the megaphone. That is the loud influencer. That is the ability to take a product or to take an idea or to take a brand and to do a feature on that and be able to put it in front of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So if we have a deal where we want to raise a lot of money and we have a following on that, we could basically crowdsource it within our own audience. When I look at, I'll stick with the Mizzen and Main example or the cricket flour protein bars, and you look at how these small brands are starting to advertise, they're advertising in front of core rabid audiences. So for me, I want to own that audience, and I at least want to be in front of the influencers who have those audiences. So to me, that is the pipeline, and it is the megaphone to be able to broadcast a message and broadcast a brand, or to be able to build the network to raise money, do roll-ups, teach entrepreneurship, bring more people into the total funnel so that I can acquire more businesses or invest in more businesses. If you were to go to the site on the day that we're recording this, it looks a little bit too much like a political news site, and I know that. But the vision is to be able to build that into a platform for entrepreneurs. And part of what I'm focused on right now is I am using what I've learned from the equity group that I've worked with, and I'm now building my executive team and my total infrastructure to be able to turn that into a media property that is essentially the amplifier and the megaphone for the messages that we want to spread, for the network we want to build, and to put brands that we control or that come from our community on the map with a blog post or a social media video that goes viral.
Very cool. Very cool. So how do you go about, thinking through these kinds of strategic decisions? Because that's what I want people to take away from this, right? Is, wow, that sounds like an amazing plan, Ryan. But, what's the method behind the thought process on these?
Yeah, there's 2 pieces to this. One is I have a really big guiding light, and that guiding light is I want to own the Cleveland Indians. And not only does that give me like the drive to do something big, but it serves as a filter. It serves as a filter for me to make decisions. So I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we got into this game because we either wanted a better life or we just wanted to avoid the life that we currently had. And we wanted to move away from some pain, and we didn't want to work a traditional job. So once we get to that point where we're making enough money and we're secure, what the heck do we do now? Like what is driving us? And I've seen a lot of my peers go into depression or self-sabotage because they've gotten rid of the pain, but they don't know what to do with their lives. So my guiding light, my guiding principle is this big goal of owning a Major League Baseball team and being the owner that sits in the dugout with eye black on his eyes and my name on my jersey. And if somebody gets injured, put me in, coach, I'm ready to play. I won't play well, but I will fill that roster spot. So that, like, nothing gets me more excited than that idea. And that's my guiding light on making business decisions. And like, what opportunities do I pursue? Do I want to make an extra $5,000 a month with this small deal? Or do I want to invest my time and my energy so that I can own the Cleveland Indians? So that's my guiding light principle. The other side of it is just being honest with myself of where my skill set lies. Like, I know that there are people getting rich in tech. I know there's people getting rich in cryptocurrency. I know nothing about tech, and I can do nothing to influence the price of Bitcoin. Now, maybe someday I'll have 20 million followers on capitalism.com, and I'll be able to put a cryptocurrency on the map with a blog post. And absolutely, I should invest in that. Pretty sure that might be insider trading, but maybe I'll have that influence someday. I don't have that right now. What I'm good at right now and where my skill set lies is in building a certain type of business and doubling down on that and investing the profits into other areas. So I think a lot of us entrepreneurs get shiny object syndrome that requires us to learn entirely different skills. I've done this, so now I've got to learn this set of business principles. And now I'm going to go in this direction because I'm tired of the business that I'm in. I know where my skill set lies, and I'm just all in on that. And if something doesn't fit my skill set, there's no business me trying to learn it because I'm already learning how to be a better entrepreneur at what I'm good at doing. So I have a big goal, and that is what guides the macro decisions, and the micro decisions are guided by where does my skill set lie so that I can double down on my skills.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was my lesson learned from Evergrow. That was my attempt to kind of branch out and stretch, my skill sets, if you will. But ultimately, I never got it to a point of development or phase of development where I could apply my skill set on the marketing side. So that was an interesting lesson learned.
So you were not able to take what your singular skill was and apply it into the business, even though it was a great idea.
Yeah, correct. Because, we're now dealing in tech, physical product design, manufacturing, all things that take a ton of time that I have zero knowledge in and a ton of money. And essentially, I never got it to the point where it was ready for sale, which is where I could have used that skill set. So that was a really valuable lesson learned. And so now, moving on with Self-Made and what we're building here, that is in my sweet spot. It is within my skill set, but I can also stretch myself to push my ambitions and goals to the next, level up, if you will. Because I think if you continue to do what you've been successful at and you don't push yourself out of your comfort zone, you're eventually just going to get passed by. Technology, times, innovation, marketing strategy, it's all changing so quick that if you don't move out of the box, and I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs I know that I've known for 5, 6, 7 years who are doing the same exact thing they were doing 5, 6, 7 years ago. They're not going to be around 5 years from now.
Right. Well, when I hire someone now, I look for 3 things. I look for, have they done it before? Are they passionate about what it is that where we're going? And do they come with a Rolodex of people who could support us along the way? And I've found that applying that same principle, those 3 areas, also works for myself and the opportunities that I pursue. So in the example of Evergrow, it would have been interesting to look at when you were starting Had you built a business like that in the past? Did you have a Rolodex of people who could help you along the way? And were you super passionate about where you were going? I think as entrepreneurs, we often tend to say, I'm really excited about going in this direction. And they follow that excitement, which is cool, except they don't have the Rolodex or the area of expertise that would support them. They have it in a different area. So for me, I was actually just interviewing somebody this morning, and it was for a role at capitalism.com. And I was telling him, part of your role is to box me in to where I am really, really good so that I can contribute to where we are going. And currently, I'm operating in this area that I'm not good, and I know it, and I'm tired of learning it, and I need you to tell me how to go there. And so I've just chosen to double down on where I'm good and apply that to the other areas of business that will come into my sphere of influence, and then bring in the people around me that have done what we want them to do in the past and that are super passionate about where we're going and that come with a Rolodex who can support us along the way.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's super powerful. You know, the last kind of, I think, direction I'd love to take this is for those folks who are just starting a business, maybe they've got one established and they want to have an 8-figure exit in the next couple of years. And we can use Self-Made Man as an example if you want to, because that is a strategic goal of mine. What do folks need to do or know about starting here today in order to make that happen? Like, what are the priorities?
Yeah, I just had Mark Ford on my Freedom Fastlane podcast, and I know you know Mark, and Mark wrote Ready, Fire, Aim. And if you look at what Mark talks about, or if you look at what our friend Russell Brunson talks about, because he's just crossed the $100 million mark, or if you look at most of the people I know who have done what I want to do, which is build a 9-figure empire, they all say you can get to $1 million by just knowing what you sell and knowing how you're going to sell it. Like that'll pretty much get you to $1 million. I've helped a lot of physical product owners just by identifying the 3 products that they're going to sell, get them to 50 sales a day, and list them on Amazon.com. Like that'll get you to $1 million. Okay, great. We've crossed off 7 figures. How do we get to 8 from here? And I've found that to be the difficult, like it's a completely different skill set, because the skill set in my experience has been, you have to, I think, shift from what am I selling to what audience am I building to what is the large mass of people that I can crank a lever and bring sales to my organization. And I think the reason for that is because that becomes the easy pipeline to continue to release additional products at higher and higher prices. So, for example, I only know how to speak to my context. So in the physical product world, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who they come up with one product and it gets them so far, and they come up with 2 or 3 products and it gets them to a certain level, but then they're stuck on whatever channel they have and they can't make the channel bigger, so they don't know what else to do. And the what else to do is to get good enough at sales and marketing to be able to push a button and be in front of millions of people so that whatever you launch next has the best shot possible of reaching critical mass and taking you to 8 figures. So when you have that ability, you can sell as much product at whatever price you would like and be able to repeat that through a number of products to find which one is going to actually take you from 7 to 8. In my experience, has been the thing that took people from that 7 to 8 figures. I know a few people who have been able to do that with only a handful of products, but most people I know had to get good at marketing and sales enough to be able to release products predictably. The other side of this is if you're going to have an 8-figure exit, you have to be in an industry that has buyers that want those types of businesses. One of the mistakes that I see, again, in my world is that people will release products that are not differentiated at all because they see an opportunity in the marketplace, which is a great place to start. But once they have the cash flow, they don't use that to invest into something that is actually differentiated in the marketplace. Because that is ultimately one of those differentiators is going to be what attracts a buyer, because they're going to look at your business and say, they're going to see the same risks and flaws that you fear in your business. They're going to say, what if this goes away? What are the assets that are being created? And those assets are branding, differentiation, and audience, and distribution. And if you don't have those things, or you're relying on small tweaks and hacks to get you to a certain level, it's going to be really difficult to both scale from 7 to 8, and it's going to be difficult to convince a buyer to take a chance on you because you don't have that many assets that are worthwhile. So you have to be in the industry where there are buyers. You have to have those assets that's different than sales. Those assets are, do people trust your brand enough to be able to have repeat buyers? Do you have margin? Do you have differentiating factors? And those are the things that are ultimately going to convince a buyer to give you the multiple that you want. And that multiple is going to take you to 8 figures.
That's awesome. Awesome. A lot of stuff to think about. Well, Ryan, this has been one of the most educational episodes I can remember in a long time. And it's just been awesome to watch you grow as quickly as you have. The fact that you just turned 30 is amazing. What else would you like to share? We've got about 5 minutes left that you think would be really valuable for everybody listening here today.
Yeah, well, you bring up an interesting point that I've heard other people say, which is that I've grown so much in the last few years. Thank you for the compliment. My life kind of started to go on this, really started to be amplified when I did 2 things. One was I started building brands that were bigger than myself. Like I started building something for the long term. And the second was when I really started to focus on my network. Our friend Cameron Harold said to me, it was just over a year ago, he's like, the older I get, the more I realize that my network is my net worth. And we were actually sitting near New York City when he told me that. I was 28 years old and I was like, okay, well, if Cameron Harold, who has built $100 million companies, tells me that, I'm going to make that like a severe priority in my life. And that was when I started doing my event, which is called the Capitalism Conference. And I figured, I don't know how to build a 9-figure empire, so I'll just pay the people who have built 9-figure empires to fly in. I'll pay their speaking fee to come in and talk about how they built 9-figure empires. And yeah, I'll have to pay them to give me all of this expertise, but I'll invite other people to come and learn that as well. And if I can condense all of that into 3 days, it'll be the best possible education that I could have to actually learn and see how 9-figure empires are built. So that's events are a terrible business, but they're the biggest up level that I have as a result of bringing those people on a stage and distilling down, how do you build the 8-figure business? How do you build the 9-figure business? And then what are you investing in for long-term cash flow and wealth? And by focusing on that way of building my network and stretching how I think, that has really forced me to think about my business differently. When I sat down with Gary Vaynerchuk and he tells me how he plans to build the $1 billion empire to buy the jets, he's 20 years ahead of me. I'm going to take that really seriously and double down on my strengths and my areas where I can actually have that type of an impact. When I sit down with John Mackey and he tells me, he's the founder of Whole Foods, and he tells me about how he builds culture and hires people, I'm going to take that personally because I'd be stupid not to do that. So that's why I do what I do, and I do the personal branding that I do, and I run capitalism.com and the Capitalism Conference, because those are the areas that I've seen when invested in. My network and building a brand that is really long-term have created that view of people saying, you've grown so much in the last few years.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's one of the, one of the biggest benefits about having a podcast as well. You get to pick the brains of the smartest
in front of those people.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. You build relationships and get knowledge and insights, and it's just a win-win. It's been awesome. Well, that's A hell of a strategy, brother. Thank you so much for sharing it and all of the lessons learned that you've gained along the way. Where should people go to connect with you, keep in touch with you, potentially learn from you when it comes to starting a business on Amazon and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, there's two places. One is I run a podcast called Freedom Fastlane. You can get it on iTunes, obviously, or at freedomfastlane.com/iTunes. And the second is I do host a 3-day event every December. This year it's December 7th, 8th, and 9th in Austin, Texas, a few blocks from where Mike and I live. Mike has joined us the last couple of years. And if you at least have $1 million business in sights, then this is going to be the place where you learn how to take it to 8 figures and 9 figures from people who are actually doing it. And we focus on building those types of long-term, real empire type of businesses. You probably run multiple businesses if you're an entrepreneur. So we talk about that. We talk about the marketing and sales piece because I've seen that be the biggest impact of going from 8 to 9. And then we talk about the investment piece so that you actually have the lifestyle that you want. And we bring in a bunch of celebrity keynotes to share how they're actually doing it. So my podcast is called Freedom Fastlane and my event is called the Capitalism Conference, and that's at thecapitalismconference.com.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, the event's fantastic. Guys, it's one of the best events I've ever been to. So if you're looking to up your game, definitely make it a point to come down to Austin. I'm sure I will be there wandering the halls and learning as well. So say hi. Maybe we'll have a margarita downstairs at the bar, and that would be awesome. Well, brother, thank you so much once again for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with our audience. It's been a pleasure as always. Can't wait to see you here around town, and thank you so much.
Mike, I love what you're doing at Self-Made Man. Thanks for considering me a part of it. I appreciate
Absolutely,
it.
brother. You bet. Well, guys and gals, thank you as always for listening. We'll see you next week. Take care.